We should get a red dot. Yes, we are live. This is Wayne Winton with Locksmith Live, and I have a special guest today, Chad Lingafelt. Chad, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm Chad Lingafelt, and thank you for having me, Wayne. This is should be a treat to finally chat on video. I think have we done one other video together before? I can't quite remember. It's been some time.
It's been some time. I think we did do one other video before, and then I was actually driving to California, and you were doing a presentation before is what we did. And so you were kind
Yep.
of the star of that one, but it was a similar format. So yes, that's the only interaction that we really had, and it's going to be wonderful to have a conversation with you today. I really love the content that you're putting out right now.
Well, I appreciate it. I've got a really good team around me and a really good team to support. So they have enabled me to be able to kind of document some of the thoughts and some of the practical things that we're working on in the business right now, and then put it into hopefully a digestible format and be able to share it out on social media. It's fun. So from an introduction standpoint, I'm involved in a locksmith company called Loc-Doc Security in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm actually celebrating my 20th anniversary in the industry. So that's quite a milestone from my perspective. And I used to think that it was kind of extreme when people talked about how long they had been in the industry, but it was probably due to the fact that I had only been in it for a few years. And so now it's like, I had this realization the other day, and I'm really not that old, but I had this realization the other day sitting at a table with someone that we were now the old guys in the industry because we've got so many new young folks that are coming in and starting to develop their careers. And I was like, this is an entire different world for us right now. But outside of that, just kind of been doing our thing over here in North Carolina.
Yeah, it's changed. It's changed. This is my 12th year in the industry. And I just rolled the odometer over to 40 this year too. So you get a whole new outlook on where you want to go with things when you have back surgery in the same year. And, I stopped moving safes so much, just kind of figure out where we want to go. And really a lot of your posts that I've been seeing over on LinkedIn, and I highly recommend anybody that's out there watching this, make sure you follow Chad on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on everywhere he is, because he has some very, very, very technical, very valuable information as far as the business side of things goes. And this is kind of what we were talking about in the green room just a little bit before we went live here is the locksmith and security industry is always the last one to catch on. I mean, we're always riding the short bus. We're always just kind of flailing around behind the rest of the industry. If you look at junk removal, gym memberships, gym ownerships, plumbers, electricians, gardener, landscapers, there's 15 gurus out there who have multi-million-dollar companies, and they're now starting to tell people about how they're hiring employees, how they're bringing people on, what they're doing to keep those employees, how you bring people in and hire teammates instead of employees, and, make it worth their while and start helping them help you and start understanding their financial needs. We didn't talk about this 20 years ago. An employer didn't come up to an employee and say, what are your financial goals over the next 5 to 10 years. And now if you're not having those conversations, you're the one that's actually behind. And it's really good to see people like you and myself and a few others out there that are willing to have these conversations and bring and shed some light on it. So Please, by all means, go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so Wayne, it's very interesting. Like the concept around what you're talking about is sharing real world experiences, right? So the thing that I have been very enamored by in other industries is seeing these people that have just learned through the grind, and then they've been able to consolidate that into ideas and thoughts and then be able to share it out with other people. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about from maybe the world of security and locksmithing is there have been some really successful companies out there. And, a lot of the concept there is on the technical knowledge of the industry. And there's a lot of people that are very technically knowledgeable around what we do. That's not really my forte. I would always say that I was a very moderately decent locksmith, not a great locksmith, but I did put in the years in the truck, servicing and doing the work. And what I kind of look at now is, what are the things that I wish I would have had access to 15 years ago, 10 years ago, as we were learning and trying to grow the business and trying to just figure out the things that we didn't know. And when you live in that world of kind of the known unknowns, there are many things that I know that I don't know. You have to look at somebody who has been through that experience. And the challenge at times is finding people that are willing to talk about it. So the only thing that I think, I don't even know that I've done differently, but the only thing that has really changed for me over the past decade or so is I've been willing to be as transparent as possible and put out on the internet the things that we are actively doing in our business to try to grow and scale. And with enough ignorance to say I don't really know if this is working or not, but I'm just documenting it along the way. And if it works, then I'm going to tell you that it worked, and if it didn't, I'm going to tell you that it didn't work and why it didn't work. And so I've got just years and years of video content out there that I've gathered. And then to kind of expand on that, back in 2018, we kind of decided the idea to spin up a podcast. And the whole concept around it is, originally was, I didn't think that there was a lot of my customers that really cared about the art of locksmithing. So there's a lot of people that do, but most of my customers, the people that were paying our bills, were not necessarily interested in the technical side of the business. And so we said, hey, how about we start to do a podcast around business ideas, practices, and strategies, the things that we're trying to do in our business to grow and to maintain some organization and so forth. And then what that turned into, to be honest, Wayne, was 4 years and almost 200 episodes, or a little over 200 episodes of really free business coaching. And I say free probably with air quotes and an asterisk, because we put a lot of time, energy, and resources into it. But we got to sit at the table or sit on a virtual meeting with some of the best authors, some of the best leadership teams, some of the best CEOs. And I just got to ask them questions and learn from them. And then we were able to take that information and apply it back into our business and then see some success with that. So I'm a big fan of it because it has impacted me as an individual, as a leader. It's helped to mold me into the person that I am today, the father that I am today, the husband that I am today, and then ultimately the leader that we are in our organization. And so I do feel like there is a bit of a kind of a bit of that pay it forward philosophy of, if people were willing to give me that information and give me that time, then I should do the same thing with other people.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, 1,000%. We're going to do a free giveaway on here too. So the person who writes the most chats in the live chat, this only counts in the live chat, is going to get this pinning mat. So whoever has the most comments, we will add them up and tally them up at the end here. And whoever has the most comments, I'm going to send this brand new lab pinning mat to you. So check that out. As far as what you're talking about, I mean, I hear this so much, and you and I invest a lot of money in consulting and coaching services and workshops. And I don't think that's a very common practice in this industry at all. I think you and I are kind of some of the outsiders. I know not recently, but about 5 years ago, I started reading a book called Man Up by Bedros Keuilian. Started, checking out some of Tony Robbins stuff. Ed Milet has some really good stuff out there on podcasts. Sure. And I just really started hearing about this 2.0 version of yourself and exactly what you're talking about. And it's like, hey, I'm in the grind right now. Like, I am just in the grinder and I'm just working until my eyes bleed, 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week. And I got to a point where where, like you said, like there's knowledge. Okay, all right, what is the apex of the industry? The apex of
Mhm.
the industry is electronic access, top tier automotive keys, Mercedes, European stuff, stuff that nobody else wants to do, and that's very, very difficult. Big electronic access packages, and then like heavy duty safe moving, high security safe moving, installation, servicing, and then bank vault opening. And I got there,
Mhm.
and I've gone out and I've opened a bank vault and charged $6,000-7,000 for one day's worth of work, and still realized I don't want to do this when I'm 60. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, I don't want to be doing that when I'm that age. And I want to start planning on how I can really start working on my business and not so much in it, where I can be there to help guide the next people that are coming in. I've put my time in the truck too, just like you. I've put my 12 years in the seat of a truck, and with a truck that's got 500,000 miles on it that I put on it, for crying out loud. And
Mhm.
I've got the seat time, I've got the hands-on time, and I've got the experience. But there's just a point where no more experience is going to do me any good. And I'm not trying to say that in an arrogant way. I'm trying to say that it is not going to add to my bottom line anymore. It is not going to add any more value to my bank account until I can start delegating and dispersing that knowledge through the people that I know and through the people that are working for me in my teammates. And now,
Mhm.
once you start really wrapping your head around building a team and leadership and all of the things that you're talking about, that we kind of bumped our heads along the side of the wall and figured out the hard way, and then started learning from some of these other people and taking workshops on how to, you know, build teammates, reading books from Navy SEAL guys like Jocko Willink, Extreme
Mhm.
Ownership, and Leaf Babbitt, and just a couple of those other books that are out there. Now I really start saying, okay, this is what I need to be doing, and this is how we can really start making a difference, and this is the level up. So tell me
Yeah.
about when you kind of who are some of your inspirations? Whose workshops did you take? Whose books did you really like that stand out? And who helped you level up and start really becoming that 2.0 version?
Yeah, so you tapped on it a little bit, the amount of investment in business coaching or what have you, and it's intriguing to me because we as an industry, right, we're very proud of the tools that we have acquired, physical tools, power tools, whatever, and all of the kind of experience and knowledge that we have. And I think the lowest line on most any businesses uh, P&L is going to be education, personal development. And this is something that we struggled with early on as well. And I wouldn't say that we've got it whipped either, but we struggled with it early on because one, it sounds expensive. Two, I'm so busy, I don't have time for it. Those are kind of the two biggest excuses that you come into. And what we found was I had by happenstance, you got to go back to let's say 2013 time frame, 2012, 2013, and just exactly what you were talking about, working long hours. I remember posting an image on Instagram back then. I was sitting in my office chair, looking out a dark window, and took a picture and said, "I want to move to New York City, to the city that never sleeps, because then I won't feel like I'm the only one working." And it was this mentality. I was in the office at 7 in the morning and I was there until 9 o'clock at night, 5 days a week. And just trying to figure it out, doing quotes, doing estimates, putting processes together, trying to hire, trying to dispatch, trying to answer the phone, trying to do sales, all of these different things. And I had a guy reach out to me just on a random cold call. His name was Kirk Graves, and he said, "Hey, I'm like I'm kind of a business coach, and I would love to come and meet with you just to learn more about your business, learn more about you and what you're trying to accomplish." And I said, "Well, look, man, I'm busy. I don't have time. If you want to meet with me, you can come meet with me at 7 o'clock in the morning because I've got to be on the phones at 8. So as long as you're here by 7 and out the door by 8, you're perfectly fine." He said, "Deal." So he shows up and we sat and talked. And this is a gentleman that I still talk to today because he's now my business coach. But at that time, our paths did not align. But he invited me to a conference, and I don't think I have it behind me. Yes, I actually do. He invited me to a conference, and they handed out a free book, and the book was called "Turn the Ship Around" by David Marquet, and it's actually sitting behind my shelf, sitting behind me right now. It sat on my desk for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and finally one day I was kind of just done. I was fed up. I was frustrated, at my wits' end, and I said, "All right, I'm going to read this book and just see what it's about." And the book outlines the transformation of a submarine captain and how he implemented a entirely different leadership model. Yes, a leadership model. Let me try that one again. Into a Navy submarine, and it hit home like significantly with me because I was living in a world there, maybe 12 to 14 employees, and I was the chief knowledge base. And when I say that, it sounds arrogant and ridiculous because it was, because I don't really have that much knowledge. But a lot of people were relying on me to be the person to answer the questions, to call, where do I need to go next? How do I need to fix this? What part do I need to order? And it was to the point where I couldn't really go on vacation. I couldn't really even go to lunch. Like, you were just kind of trapped there. And I said, there has to be a different way. And this book outlined the process of, it wasn't a them problem. It wasn't an employee problem or a team problem. It was a me problem. And so I had to transform myself into the leader that I needed to be. And so fast forward, 12 years or so, and now I operate in a different mentality because I don't want to be that chief knowledge source. My whole goal and my strategy right now is to set out a vision for our organization, where we want to go, and make sure that I'm being strategic in providing the resources, the plan, the strategy, and then put the right people and the smart people in the place that they can take it and carry it on farther than what I would be able to do. So I had a limited factor, and I just did this again in 2023. We restructured our organization, got some new leadership in place, and because I was, again, that ceiling, it was just a different ceiling that we were hitting. And so I'll have to do it again in several years. But it's just this process of, one, having the right people around you, having that coach around you, making sure that they're holding you accountable, making sure that they're asking the tough questions. Because in an organization, especially when you work for yourself, who else is going to challenge you or ask you the questions or push you out of your comfort zone? So having somebody that's going to do that is invaluable, and it's one of the best pieces of information or best pieces of investment that we make currently.
Right. Yeah. And you started your transformation right when I started. That's when I kind of got into the locksmithing thing, was right in 2012.
Sure.
And so that's why our paths keep crossing, and I keep seeing, we're kind of all following each other along. I'm just a couple years behind you is the main thing behind that. And you managed to figure out things a little bit quicker because you've had your boots on the ground. I was just an hourly employee, heavy equipment operator before, just didn't even really think about it. And then pretty soon starting to have back problems at, 30, 20,
Yeah.
28, and thinking, hey, maybe, there might be something different in business ownership. And then now you move into there, and now, okay, so now you go from an hourly employee to like you said, I was the guy who could run the excavator, everything with wheels and some things without them, the bulldozer, the this,
Sure.
the that. I could run everything on the job site. And I got to a point where I'm like, I'm just running around, and there's no, I've hit my ceiling. The only way to go up is upper management, and that's in an office, and you might as well just put me in a coffin. I got ADHD big time, man. I'm not sitting in a cubicle. That's not happening.
Sure.
So then I took this opportunity, and I was like, you know what? It looks to me like when I'm 60 years old, I could pin locks and sit in my truck and do that. And it's fairly easy on the body, and there's much more reward to it. You see a locksmith come in and they mount a strike. It's funny. We were talking about this in the last interview. The guy was an electrician, and he's like, man, we're up in the attic, and we're got covered in insulation, and we're running wire, and we're just sweating like dogs and just working ourselves to death. And here comes the locksmith, comes in, cuts in a strike or just pulls a little wire and does a surface mount strike, hands him a bill for $800 and leaves. And he's like, that's my week's paycheck. Wait a minute
Mhm.
here. What's going on? Maybe that's a good avenue to go down. And so then now in there, okay, that's all fine and dandy. Now we're making more money. Now, I mean, an average day can bring in $1,200, $1,500 on average for some locksmiths. Um,
Mhm.
where's that cap lead to now? All right, I can bring in $300,000-$400,000 a year by myself, but where do we get to that next level? How do we hit $500,000? How do we hit $800,000? How do we hit seven figures? What does that look like, and what is it going to take to do that? And that's when you really start realizing there's no way I can do this by myself. I need administrative help in the office with the books. I need an operations manager, and
Mhm.
I need another technician. And hiring is going to be a process. You're not just going to magically you hire somebody and the first person's going to turn out to be the perfect employee. I have news for everybody out there that doesn't happen very, very often. And
No.
so just bumping my head along, learning these things, has brought me to do this podcast. And like you, I would like to save somebody the headache. That's the whole reason that I started doing the YouTube channel. That's how I kind of started to get
Sure.
recognition in this industry. Is I had so many issues and such a hard time learning about the problems of locksmithing the job that I had to video record it so I could remember what the heck I did just for my own benefit. And then it turned out, hey, there's a bunch of other people that could really use this information and help them out too. Why don't I document it, bundle it up, package it real nice, and let them have access to it too? And
Mhm.
now starting to do that with the business side of things as well through these podcasts. I also do a documentary where people can kind of see the ins and outs of the day-to-day work and kind of blending the business side with the actual work side as well. And
Mhm.
that's where I started getting into it. I'm like, I'm in the truck for hours and hours. I have a 2020 Ford F350 and there's 220,000 miles on it. It gives you an idea of a 5-year span of how much I drive. And that's my work vehicle, not to mention my personal vehicle. So I have a lot of time to where I can absorb books, I can absorb podcasts, I can
Mhm.
absorb information. And if things work for these other industries, why are we not applying that here in our industry? And as soon as I started applying those tips and tricks and techniques and strategies into from leadership into this industry, now we're really starting to catch fire and starting to really see some production and really, the employees are doing great. Really starting to see things come together and just really tighten things up and head in that right direction.
Mhm. Yeah, well, all of those things are components of growing a business, and just for context, and I don't know that this is always the case. I mean, there's some people figure it out faster. Our business, Loc-Doc Security, started in 1982 ish. So it's been around for quite some time. I got involved in the company in 2004, and I was the fifth employee at that time. So, like, conceptually, there was 22 years of one business operations that were there before I even got involved, and 22 years with only 5 employees. Now, there had been some employees here and there. They had some churn, right? Like you were talking about, they would hire one and let one go, or hire one and one would quit, and so forth.
Yeah.
And the thing in any scaling business and any type of structure is there are ceilings. And what ultimately you come to find out is that there is a ceiling of, one, the amount of revenue that one person can manage, and two, the number of people that they can manage effectively. That
Right.
is drastically reduced if that business owner or that person is also the proprietor. They are also actively working in the business. So now I've parsed out my day. 50% of my brain is focused on doing the job. 50% of my brain is focused on trying to grow the business. And so you're limiting that. One of the first steps is, how do you escalate yourself out of it? And I've talked to people about this a lot. So here's my personal opinion on it, and this is just a culmination of a lot of the books and people that I've talked to. Is, number one, someone says, well, I love doing what I do. I enjoy being a locksmith. I like pinning cylinders. I like cutting keys. I like dealing with customers, doing those things. Then do that, right? Understand two factors. One, your business has a limited scale, so it's got a limited revenue that it'll generate, which is also a limited net earnings that you're going to receive, because you were just talking about it. And $400,000 or $500,000 in revenue does not mean $500,000 in my pocket. It's very small percentage of that. The average locksmith company is less than 10% net income. So that's $500,000. They're bringing $50,000 in net income. Secondly, is if you do want to still do that and you want to grow the business, then hire somebody that can run the operations, still maintain ownership. Somebody can run the operations, and you can go about doing what you're going to do. Just realize that you're going to have to give up some control of that business to that individual, because they are going to have to make decisions on your behalf. It can be done either way, or just realize, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to make it. And this is kind of, it almost turns into a self-employed hobby. That's what it's going to be. So you can't do all of them. The old statement, you can't have your cake and eat it too, is applicable. You can't have all of those types of things and then also try to run or try to grow a scaling business. You've got to figure out what is the most important for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you've got to be ready and willing to do that double duty. And that's, I'm still finding myself in that struggle right now, where I do have to go into management brain and then go into tech brain. And I've got to be able to transition through both. But you're not going to be able to take that next step until you do that. Until I have 2 employees or 3 employees and 3 trucks on the road with a backup truck that's turnkey, ready to go, because we all know trucks go down all the time, and we can't shut down because a van needs to go into the shop. We just got to keep people moving and keep people rolling. And until you kind of level up to that step, I mean, every time one person goes down, then I'm right back into the thick of it. Or if the phone's going crazy, we can't let that work slide, and we can't let our customer base, our core value customer base, we can't leave them hanging, because we work so hard to build such a brand to bring them in and to get them. And you don't want to let that go.
I'll tell you this, just from experience on that side. One, I agree with everything that you're saying, and it's a very hard decision to make. The couple of things to kind of keep in mind. One is, as long as you're the backup, the crutch, whatever you want to call it, then you'll always be that. Like, figuring out a way to create that discipline. Some of this is joke and some of this is real. When we elevated a couple of technicians over the years into project manager positions, and they're like, okay, yeah, I'll do that, but I also want to keep my tools. And I said, no, you can't have the tools. And this one guy snuck tools in his pickup truck so that he could work on job sites with his guys. And I physically had to take his tools away from him, because he needed to be in a different mindset. Project managing is a completely different mindset than being a physical technician installing the work. And when you do that, you're taking away the opportunity for somebody else to be successful. So I had to take away his tools because he was robbing his team of being successful. Second example that I'll give you is back in 2015, we were, I want to say, just 18 employees. I don't know, and it probably doesn't really matter. But we had one technician that was going to move away, and he moved like 3 hours away from where our office was, and so he was unable to continue to work with us. And it was the last time that I can remember that I was paralyzed in a decision. So exactly what you were talking about. The decision was, we needed to hire somebody to replace him, but we knew that we couldn't hire somebody fast enough to train them to replace that particular individual. So what was the response? And the answer was, myself and my business partner, whose name is Chris, every day we would come in and do our normal job, do our normal processes and things that need to be done. And every day at 3:00, we would take a list of all of the remaining jobs that didn't get done that day, and we would go jump in a service van together and go knock out 3 or 4 jobs. And then we would exhaust ourselves, come back in the next day, do it all over again. We were making poor business decisions day in and day out because we were exhausting ourselves in getting into and getting the work done. It set us back was 12 months of growth, that particular period of business. And I can track it down for you. I can show it to you on charts and graphs. It set us back 12 months of growth, and we had to reset ourselves. It took me 3.5 months to hire somebody, another 6 months to train them to where they could functionally do the job. That was a 9-month span. And then 12 months outside of that was where we basically caught back up to where we were prior to that. Now, that's hindsight. That's easy for me to say that. But the difference is the next time that happened, as soon as somebody put in their notice because they were moving away, I hired 2 people because I needed to train them and have them up and running and be able to replace and grow, because I couldn't just keep working on hiring that one person over and over and over again and repeating that process. It was one of the hardest decisions. It was one of the hardest lessons that I learned, but it is something that has stuck with me for a long number of years. And it's one of the ways that we operate now in business. We have at times have to fall back into filling a gap. But unless you have a plan and a strategy to get back out of that gap, it will always be a Achilles heel for you that you will never be able to scale at the level that you'd want to.
That's some of the best advice and information that I've ever heard, and I completely agree with that. It is so hard to do that double duty to where you quite literally have to make that conscious decision. Otherwise, it is literally one step forward and one step, sometimes 2 steps back. I mean, at one point, we had a business partner, and he had a technician, so I had basically another person to manage. I had 2 trucks and 2 techs on the road, or 3 trucks and myself on the road as another.
Mm-hmm.
There was like 5 or 6 moving parts there, and that was great. It's good for business and whatnot. But it started to get, like you said, you started to touch on a little bit earlier, and I don't know if you actually got to the figure or not, but one person can only manage between 5 and 7 other people. At
Mm-hmm.
least that's the information that I've heard effectively. You start
Effectively,
to get
yes.
much, yeah, effectively. You get much more than that, and all of a sudden you're not as effective with each one of those people. So that's kind of where it's at there. And then things happen. My business partner had some personal stuff. He ended up moving away. Technician left. Another
Mm-hmm.
guy left, and so now we went from 6 down to back to 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that strategy where you said, hey, instead of hiring one, I got to hire 2 people. I gotta double down on everything, and that's the only way to really double down on yourself and double down on training. You got to train a guy anyways. You might as well train 2 people at the same time, as opposed. It's going to take just as much effort to do one, and people don't
Mm-hmm.
realize it slows me down to train somebody. Like
Mm-hmm.
it I can't move as fast because I'm just going at hyper speed. Not even my brain isn't even functioning half the time because I'm on autopilot. Now I have to slow it down. I have to explain to them. I have to check with them. Effective leadership. Do you understand this process? Can you repeat it back to me and make sure that
Mm-hmm.
it's being absorbed, and making sure I'm not picking up any red flags along the way to say, hey, am I even wasting my time investing in this person? I've had people that applied and they were hired and fired the same day.
Yeah.
Some of them don't last a week. A lot of them barely make it through training. And it takes, if I spend 3 months training somebody to the point where they can get in a truck and go run a call on their own, competently and effectively, and answer the phone, bid the job, run the call, accept the money, where I need them to be, that takes 3 months. I got to get 3 months. I got to have them work for a year to be able to recoup my investment on that, just to break even practically.
Well, one thing that I'll add into what you're talking about that I think is very interesting, especially for our industry. So I want to kind of point it that direction. Most people that own a business in our industry as a locksmith or a security professional are doing it, one, because they're good at it. So they have a good technical knowledge, or they have at least a functional technical knowledge. The biggest holdup that you'll find in scaling a business is the knowledge that no one else can do it as good as I can. Okay. So what is the fix for that? Because that's an easy thing to say, not an easy thing to solve. There's lots of personality assessments out there. There's lots of knowledge-based assessments out there that you can use, so you can Google it. But understanding the difference between inductive and deductive learners is going to be huge, because exactly to what you're talking about is all about training. So everybody asks the question, what's the perfect training program? What's your training guidelines? Blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, the perfect training program is catered to the learning capability of the human that you're trying to train, because we're not AI. So some people learn by see me do one, I do it myself. Let me get practice. Let me make mistakes. Let me figure it out. Some people need to read a manual and have a documented process to follow. You have and various forms, and you've got to understand that, because you could have developed the best training program in the entire world, but if it doesn't apply to the individual that is trying to gather that knowledge at that point, it's ineffective. So you may have two different people that you hired, and one person is inductive, one person is deductive. You now have to teach them two different ways, and it can be a challenge. But the biggest challenge that we have in our industry is there's not clear documented training. So for someone that it would prefer to read a manual and follow the steps, and if you could hand it to them, they would follow it flawlessly every single time. You don't necessarily, as a small business, have a document that you can hand them that could outline. And Wayne, you just hit on it, because it's very, very true. It's not even just the fact of how do I pick open a cylinder, how do I pin a cylinder, how do I install a lock set or whatever. It's how do I interact with the customer? How do I call before I go to a job site? What do I do when I get on a job site? Do I introduce myself? Do I assess the problem? Do I tell them they don't know what they're talking about and I'm here to fix it and I'm the expert? Like, what is the engagement? And then how do we handle collection of money? How do we handle follow-up? All those types of things. That is just the business operations side. It has nothing to do with the technical side. And you can have the smartest, best locksmith in the world that could be a complete jerk to your customers, and you don't want them on your job sites because they're going to create bad customer experience. So it's all of that. But again, I say that to say, one, it's got to be a documented process, because some people are inductive and they need to receive the information that way. The people that are deductive are going to be the ones that are going to figure it out as they go. So give me a vague direction of where I'm headed and I'll be able to figure it out. I believe I have those definitions correct. Somebody can fact check me on it. But so you always want to start with a good documented process. You can expand on the other side in a verbal communication or a show me perspective. But if you don't have the document to point back to, then it's going to be a challenge for consistency.
I agree 100%. Some of the comments that are coming up through here is, just finding good people is a big problem. That is a big problem. It's a big problem all the way across the country. And I've talked to several business owners who, I hope they're not doing their recession rain dance, but they're almost implying that they want to see a little bit of a recession so that they can get some workers to actually want to come back to work and get out from behind the screen of a computer, and it's, I can see where they're coming from. But one of the biggest things, and tell me if maybe you can explain some of your hiring process as well. But one of the biggest things that I found was one of the books that I read was, not just people hire somebody out of desperation, and that is the worst possible thing you can do. What I found is every time I hired somebody out of desperation, I ended up getting somebody who I didn't really believe could do the job as effectively as they needed to. And I think that I could have got somebody better. As soon as I stopped hiring out of desperation and just said, you know what, I can only get so much done in 12 hours. The bank account has enough money in it. Let's just wait and find somebody. And if I have to turn a few customers to my competitors, that's a trade that I'm willing to make, and an investment that I have to make in myself and my own time and my own personal sanity, so that I can start putting them through a process. And the process that I started doing was I would have my operations manager, who's female, interview them first. I would have her reach out first. And the reason that I do that is women tend to ask different questions and they hear different things, and they're looking for different things from an administrative point of view. They're looking for different personality traits, and they're looking for a few different things than I'm looking for. I'm looking for, here, I'm going to show you how to rekey a lock. You rekey the lock. Okay, good. Get in the truck, right? And so when I started making it a several person process to where they would interview with her, and then if that went well, I would make them wait a couple days, and I would wait to see. And I'm looking for them to actually try and reach back out to her or to me, because that's telling me a very key point indicator here is that they want this job. They're hungry for it. They're not just sitting back waiting for me to call them. And that's a very, very good strategy. And for people who are out there that are looking for a job, I would really recommend you make sure you make that extra effort. And if you get an interview, call back and do some follow-up, or shoot an email with a follow-up as well. And then what I would do is I would, if they did follow up, I would say, yeah, okay, I'm the owner and I will do an interview with you. And I'll go ahead and basically come out and do the whole thing. I'll rekey a lock right in front of them, and I'll say, can you follow that process? Because most of the people, almost every single person, I have not hired anybody with any experience. Everybody that we've got in here has to come in green and wet behind the ears, and just, had to teach them everything that they needed to know. So I just accepted that fact. And I'm like, I'm going to have to train them. Do you have a mechanical background? Can you treat my office personnel with respect? And so then we'll see if they have the mechanical aptitude. We'll see if they have the ambition to call me back. Do you want to hurry up and get in this van? And then if they call me back again, hey, did we get the job? These are really good things that I'm looking for. And then the final step is I would have them ride with my technician, my lead technician, who would be the one that would be doing most of the training with them. I'll have them ride with them for a couple hours or a day or whatever, and then get their feedback. And if my entire team now says, hey, this is a good candidate, they work well with others, they're willing to be flexible, they have some good customer service interactions, and they also have the mechanical ability, now we can start taking that person, we can really start putting some effort into them, and we can all start pouring into them and bring them to be that employee and that teammate that we need to be, and making that mindset shift of employee versus teammate. Teammates stay a little late. Teammates go the extra mile to help you out. They show up early. Employees clock out a little bit early on Friday. They show up a little bit late on Monday. Those are the kind of big differences that you're looking for. And I need a rock solid team to be built around me. And that's what I'm looking for. So what are you looking for when you're hiring teammates for your organization?
That's a good question. So a couple things that I was notating down here. I just to say something a little bit controversial. I disagree with the statement. Finding good help is a challenge. I think there's also to say finding a good boss is a challenge, right? It's a hard thing to do. So as many employees that are looking, as many of us that are looking for good employees, there's that many employees that are looking for a good boss or a good leader or a good organization to work with. So the question comes back to, how are you positioning yourself to be that type of organization, that type of company, that type of boss that people want to work with? One of those things is to provide a clear path. So one of the things you just outlined, I think, is awesome. Like giving people the ability to kind of do their own follow-up, making sure that they are calling back and scheduling that appointment, scheduling that interview. One thing that I think that will find for you are people that have a high level of autonomy, or somebody that is a driven individual. And in whatever role that you're looking for, that may fit the bill. Some of the things that are a challenge is whenever you are looking for somebody to fit a particular role, to follow a preset of determined guidelines, a strategy, or whatever, they may not possess the autonomy level to go above and beyond if the path is not clearly lined out for them. So, for instance, if you went to our website right now to fill out an application, it's going to give you a 2-step process to fill out an application and schedule your own interview. We don't schedule the interviews. The prospective employee does, because we've set out the plan. This is what you do: step 1, step 2. So just keep that in mind. Is in making the process clear and defined in most anything that you can, so that it's easy for people to succeed, because you want them to succeed. I am a big fan of the technical skill set challenges. We used to use a little challenge when we were doing interviews years ago. We would give them a box, a cylindrical lever set in a box with instructions, and ask them to remove the cylindrical lock from the mount. And they would There you go. There's our website right there. So if you hit apply now on there, it's going to take you directly to the page for the two-step process. Yeah,
Okay.
that big. There you go. And so we would give them a box and a lock that it was on a mount, and ask them to follow the process to be able to remove the lock off the mount. Well, if they didn't have any experience, that was fine. But what we were looking for is, did they read the instructions and could they understand and follow those instructions? We weren't looking for a flawless install or a flawless removal. We were just asking for them to be able to read and follow some instructions. And it was wild to see some people that wouldn't even glance at the instructions, and they would go straight in with channel locks and a pry bar and everything else to try to get the lock off. And that's not necessarily the really bad thing. The bad thing was that they refused to look and follow look at and follow the instructions. It may have opened that up in a new tab for you. I'm not sure
I
if I did
did.
that
I
one.
did. I did. I'm
Okay.
going to go ahead and check that out right now. Sorry about
But
that.
no, you're fine. But anyways, that's just a thing that I would advise is, one, a clear path. And you say, well, I'm a small company, it's hard for me to do that. If it's on your website, or even if it's just a document that says, we complete this application, schedule an interview, here's what we're looking for. There's plenty of information on there to say who we are. And one of the other things that I think I've found over the years, and this has been advice from other people as well as experience that we've had, is we try to put out as much information as possible around what to expect. Not a lot of people like to go into things blindly. So, what does the interview look like? What does the process look like for getting a job? What is the job entail? What is this company that I'm looking to work for? How does that operate? And so we try to give as much of that information out front as possible.
Yeah, and that's really why I wanted to bring you on today. I mean, just look at all of this stuff that you've got on here, as far as weekly items. You got profit sharing, you've got benefits, company events. I see you posting all the time on LinkedIn and your social media pages. You're involving your team and you're bringing them out, and you're doing things with them, and you're actually, creating that environment that people are going to want to be in. And that's why you're attracting the people that you have, and that's why you have the team that you've built, because it's not just, hey, I have a job, if you want money, come work for me. Like, that mindset is 50 years ago and just does not work anymore. It doesn't.
Correct. Yeah,
People
and
want to grow.
yeah, and the old adage of like, well, your appreciation is the paycheck on Friday does not work either. That is old school mentality. Finding ways to acknowledge people that are doing well, and make sure that they know that they are appreciated is a big thing. This coming weekend, actually, we have a company event called Fall Fun on the Farm. So we're all the employees and all their family. We're going to go to a farm and pick pumpkins, because apparently that's something that you're supposed to do in the fall. But anyway, so that'll be something fun, just as a Saturday get together. Earlier this year, we did a big picnic at our office. We had the entire front parking lot filled with inflatables, and we were hitting each other with inflatable. I don't even know what they're called, where you stand
Those
on
little tube things.
yeah, and just beat
Yeah.
the fool out of each other. That was fun. Anyways,
Yeah.
we had a dunk tank and all that type of stuff. But we try to have 4 key events every year, one for each season. Some of them are full family events, and some of them are just employee only. But just try to be intentional about taking a break and doing something together as an organization outside of the grind that is the day to day, and getting the job done. So, anyways, those are just some things. Again, trying to find, as you were saying, trying to find ways that makes your company appealing to work for. Not that it's like, well, if you come here, everybody gets, free lunch every day, but just a place. People are looking for a place, one, that they can work, they can do good work, and that they can feel appreciated doing good work. That's what people are looking for. So how are you producing that environment? And if you can produce that environment, then you'll have people knocking down your door all day long, because they want to be in that environment, because that's not the norm. There's plenty of other places to work out there where you can show up and get a paycheck. Where are the places that you can go and work and enjoy the people that you work with, feel appreciated, and then feel like you're accomplishing something towards a larger goal?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that right there, that was the big key factor for me too, is learning all these things. And why can't I keep employees? Why do they keep leaving? Why do they become my competitors? Why do these things happen? Well, as soon as we take the finger and point it right back, who's in charge? Who's in
Yeah.
charge? Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? Is it's who's in charge? And if that person's me, well then okay, I got to wear my humility hat and I got to say what I'm doing is incorrect. And now I have to eat my humble pie and I have to say, okay, I need to humble myself and I need to go out there and I need to go get some more information. I need to go get some education. I need to get some coaching. I need to take some classes. I need to read some books. What are these successful companies doing to attract these employees to come in and then they feel valued? How do you make an employee feel valued so they do feel like my technician Josh, he knows he runs a good tight ship. His van is organized. His customers are well taken care of. If he gets a good review from a customer, that's $25 on his paycheck. If they're working on a big project and it's out of town or it's a super, kind of late night or something, hey guys, lunch is on us, or here's some coupons, get some pizza for your family or whatever, those are the kind of things that really show that you care more than a paycheck. Money is money, and money solves the problem of not having money, and we all need to have some money. But there are so many more things out there that matter so much more than just that. And I just love the way that you've put that. We're going to be coming up on about an hour here. So we've got about 9 minutes left. We were only going to go maybe 30 minutes or so, but it's been such a wonderful conversation with you that we just have to keep going. But I know you've got some stuff to do and I've got some stuff to do too. I would like to spend the last 10 minutes talking about you and your new podcast. Where can we find it? What's the first episode going to be about? Who are the other people that are going to be on there? And just go ahead and let's talk about you and your podcast here for a little while.
Well, I'll talk more about the other people and less of me. But so I've got two buddies that we have known each other for I don't even know now, 6-8 years, and that may be an exaggeration. It may be less than that. I'm not sure. But anyways, we talk regularly, and when I say regularly, daily, on running locksmith and security businesses. We first got together in person to do kind of our own little summit in January of 2020. So we had known each other for quite a number of years, but we flew to Minneapolis, Minnesota. One of the gentlemen lives there, but the other two of us flew there in the middle of the winter, which was not the smartest move on our end, and put ourselves up in a little Airbnb apartment for 3 days. And we basically dissected our businesses from a financial side of things, from operations side, and we're doing almost an internal audit for each other. And that was the first time that really I had been able to do that for my business. And I don't remember for the other guys if it was first time or the most in depth, but we were able to actually get into the nitty gritty in comparison. We're not competitors. So we're all from different areas of the country. One gentleman's from Canada. And from that, it has driven a high level of growth in all three of our organizations. We all run very similar sized organizations, both in very similar business strategies, but there are some actual variations in there as well. So we'll talk about that, I'm sure, on the podcast as we go along. But we had the idea, hey, what if we take this conversation that we have ongoing, the personal challenges that we give to each other, the lessons that we share with each other, the successes that we have with each other, or whatever, and we take that into a consolidated topic-based podcast that we can do. And so I got the guys to commit to 12 episodes, and that was the origination of it. Since then, we have expanded our topic list to 28 episodes at the current moment. So we will at least have that many. And it's going to be called the Unlocked Podcast. And it's really going to be less on the technical side of the industry, because none of the three of us are very technically focused on the locksmith industry, but we're more on the operations business side, finance, building a team, growing a team, developing a team, all those types of things. So our very first episode is going to be around KPIs, so key performance indicators. What are the things that I need to be looking at as a business? If I'm doing $500,000 a year in revenue, if I'm doing $10 million a year in revenue, what are the KPIs that I should be looking at and have my pulse on? One of the things that we found over the years, as we have done in-depth analysis on all kinds of businesses, is a lot of small businesses, and especially small trade businesses, really find out what they did from a either revenue or net income perspective in April of the following year. Whenever they're getting all their taxes filed and their personal taxes filed, that's when they find out, did I actually make any money or did I lose any money? And that is a absolute challenge to run a business in if you're looking that far in the rear. So how do you move those key performance indicators to show you by the week and by the month if you're winning, if you're being successful? And when things are not going the right way, those key performance indicators should make those allow you to make those adjustments to get back on track. So that's going to be kind of the first topic that we go. But we also have on basically assessing a hire. So not necessarily just the art of hiring, but how do I assess this team member? We're going to talk about kind of leadership coaching inside of your organization. I'm going to see if I can not break everything and look up the full list so that I can give you more. And we have topics on utilizing personality assessments to be able to work with your team the best. We're going to look at industry trends and challenging, managing growth. I got the list in front of me now. Data-driven decisions, financial reporting, understanding the basics of a P&L. That's, if I'm a really good practitioner and doing what I'm doing, the P&L is something that my CPA takes care of or my accountant takes care of. Well, as a business owner, you've got to understand what you're looking at, dealing with competition, maintaining motivation, and handling failures and rejections. So just some of the meetings, how to handle meetings and agendas and so forth. So right now, 27 topics is kind of our target. We should be releasing podcasts on a weekly basis. And I believe the first one, we're not quite sure what day we're going to start releasing them on, but the first one should be coming out next week, the week of the 30th. So the 1st of October will be our first episode released. And then, we'll start having them from there. But it's called the Unlock Podcast. It's myself, Tony Hokinson, and Lars Johnston. They're both business owners inside of the industry.
That's going to be fantastic. I know I'm certainly going to be tuning into it. It definitely sounds like a lot of the stuff, that we've kind of spoken a little bit about here. I know that this year at the Aloha convention in Las Vegas, I'm the Southwest board director for Aloha as a board member. And so what I wanted to offer was there was already a ton of classes and I didn't want to double up on anybody else. So what we did is we offered these after hours classes. And I figured business would be one of the nice things to do. And myself and another board member, Mr. Mark Dawson, who's the Southwest board director, Mark, I believe, or have seen him around.
I know Mark. Yep.
Really, really great guy, very business savvy, in that 7-figure a year category and bracket. And so I thought, hey, let's chop it up and you and me, we were both going to do something on business. And I was like, well, let's just combine them and see what we can do. And we went around the room and asked people, introduce themselves. Almost nobody knew how to read a balance sheet. Nobody knew what KPIs were. Nobody knew the words that were coming out of our mouth. And, we had to bring what we thought was going to be a high level business coaching session conversation. And we had to bring that back down to how many people have written a business plan. And even that number became shocking, quite shocking. And so we literally said, every person in this room right now, you should be writing out a business plan. It doesn't have to be long. In fact, the shorter, the better. But you should have some goals. Who has goals? Who's just working and just throws the chips against the wall and sees how much money you made? Or do you have a target goal and every single day that you're not hitting that goal, if you want to make 6 or 7 figures, you got to break that down all the way into a daily number. You know what I mean? And then if you don't hit that number, well, now you got to make it up the next day. And that's what keeps you hungry. That's what keeps you chugging forward. That's what keeps you moving in that direction. And it was very, very shocking to see how many people did not think along those lines and did not think along those concepts. And now you wonder why your business is failing. You wonder why you're only making, at the end, you work all these crazy hours, you work till your eyes bleed, like Chad and I already know and experience, and then you made $25,000 at the end of the year
Yeah.
profit, right?
Hmm.
How did that
Yep.
happen? How did that happen? I gave my heart and soul in some of the best years of my life for 20 grand. Get out
Hmm.
of here. That's crazy. That's insanity. Now let's
Well,
step back. Go ahead.
yeah, you'd have the same type of results if you just jumped in your work truck and took off and never looked at the fuel gauge. At some point in time, you're going to be sitting on the side of the road without any gas, and that's an awkward experience, right? So you check your fuel gauge. You know how many miles to the gallon that you get. You know how many miles you get to the tank, and you watch your fuel gauge because you can balance all three of those things, especially in the technology side, right? The technical skill trade where we know how things work. You don't just rely on your gas gauge. You also, I guarantee you, every single person that's listening to this podcast also has a good understanding of how much fuel, how many miles they get in their tank, and they watch
Mhm.
their odometer. You've referenced your odometer 3 times, I think, in this conversation for the past hour.
Because I pay attention.
So you don't just trust the fuel gauge, you don't just trust the odometer, you don't just trust, these other factors, the oil pressure. You use all of those things to keep balanced. Is my vehicle in working condition? And outside of that, you would it's kind of ridiculous.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's just it. You gotta keep track of everything. It's not just go, 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 go. And that's what I did for years. I thought, okay, well, I'll just work harder.
Yep,
Well,
work harder.
you
Yep.
can only work harder so much until the human body starts to literally break down. And then what? And then that's the other thing that people don't realize. Like with my back surgery this year, I was down for 8 weeks before I could really
Yep.
get back into the swing of things. And when a large portion of your income is safe moving, that doesn't really work out that well, And
Sure.
I don't. I always on every safe move, I make sure that I'm the lead point person there, and I have to be there because it's such a dangerous task.
Hmm.
Um, that I really needed to do that. And so that's what really started to get me thinking, hey, we really start needing to look at things differently, and we need to start being more organized, more proactive. What else can I do to really start pulling myself out of that field? And how can I start assisting and helping everybody else to make sure they're on point and their delegations are getting done the way that they need to get done? And
Yep.
that's pretty much the keys to it there. Let me ask you one more question here. And
All
there's
right.
another key factor here that I think people miss. And that is, what does your morning routine look like? What does your daily routine look like? Because I think there's a huge factor here that a lot of people are missing.
Yeah. So it's probably not going to be the answer that you're looking for, Wayne. But I will say, if you go back 3 years or so, I had a very strict morning routine. I was
Mhm.
up at 5 a.m. I was listening to podcasts, reading, getting all my emails, reporting, those types of things done. My day looks completely different now as the company has grown and I've been able to put other leadership in perspective. So my morning routine now is more focused on getting up and checking the key performance indicators. I've got all my kind of screens set up here in my own office, in my home office, so I can see all those things. Checking some of the high level reports that I need to be aware of, verifying my calendar, and then my day is really spent in meetings and coaching our leadership team. That's where my effort is placed. And so every day looks a little bit different for me, but the start of my day is a lot more relaxed than it has been in years. So yeah, if we had this conversation in 2022, it would be a completely different conversation. But at that point in life, I was trying to build a team. I was trying to physically operate a business, and so now I own a business. I operate more in a CEO role than I do in an operations role. But when I was operating in an operations role, I had to have a very specific routine to be able to get my day done.
Yes, and I think that's you had to go through that. You wouldn't have gotten to where you are now without switching that routine up, without changing diet, without getting and I'm not looking for anything crazy. I'm just talking about look at you. You're a healthy, fit guy. You probably hit the gym or at least do some kind of exercise. You probably watch what you eat. I'm probably not going to see you smashing burgers and beers for lunch and dinner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are
Well,
the kind of things too that really
yeah,
help that people don't realize.
no, that's true. So, I mean, if you go back 10 years or 12 years, I was about 70 pounds heavier. I was smashing fried chicken wings and pizza and soft drinks every night before I went to bed, waking up with a headache, not feeling well, and repeating the process again. And we had to shift our entire mindset. My wife was a big proponent of that, helped me get kind of my body in shape. And
Mhm.
over the past 4 years, since 2020, and I've recently started to shift it a little bit, but I was doing one meal a day to focus on clarity of mind. So it was less of the physical side, but what I'd found is I was eating so much food, and I wasn't really gaining the weight, but I was becoming very groggy in my mindset, and I needed to be sharp whenever I had to make decisions. I am my role now is to make high quality, low volume decisions. And so, in order for me to do that, I have to be in a place of knowledge and clarity to be able to do that. So, yeah, that's minimizing all those things that you were talking about. And I don't hit the gym. I have lower back issues as well. My big thing is I love playing golf, and so I walk and carry my bags, which doesn't contribute to my back pain, just for clarity. But I walk and carry my golf bag for 18 holes, and that is burns a lot of calories and gets me a lot of steps in. So I try to do that several times a week to maintain my, you know, pristine physical appearance.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Yes,
It's
sir.
gone longer than I expected, but that was because everything was just golden content here. Odin is going to be our winner of the pinning mat. So I put my email address, tricountylocksmithservice@gmail.com. Send me your contact info. I'm going to send you this awesome pinning mat. Chad, this is by
Nice.
far one of the best, most intelligent, um, awesome conversations that I have had in a very, very long time. I'm extremely grateful that you were able to come on today and share some of your knowledge and share some of those pains and struggles, because that's the people don't realize. They hear about these other people in these other industries and they're like, oh, well, that's over there. That's
Yeah.
electricians. That's them. That's landscapers. That's them. It's always these other problems. Only when we as industry professionals and industry leaders come to the table and say, these are my scars. Look at my scars. This is
Hmm.
what this industry's done to me, and I can help you learn from my scars. That's exactly what your podcast is going to be about. That's what this podcast is about. And that's what we're about, is helping everybody out there to make sure that they can level up, get to where they want to be, and maybe not be 60 years old with nothing but debt and nowhere to go, which is where most
There you
people
go.
end up.
Yep.
So
Odin, make sure you give that pinning mat to your next employee.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for making the comments. Thank you, Chad, so much for being here today. We're going to end the live stream and we'll probably chat for a second. Thank you, everybody. The #1 podcast out there for security professionals. Check out the Unlocked podcast with Chad as it comes out. Thank you, everyone.